And here comes Milwaukee. Forbes another three. Oh, no! This is the Random Scrub Heap Podcast.
Welcome to the memoriam, the funeral, the eulogy for your 2023-2024 Miami Heat. They weren't fun. They weren't entertaining. They weren't aspirational. They didn't overachieve. They weren't consistent. But they were our Miami Heat. That's all I got. Welcome to the Random Scrub Heat Podcast. I'm LJ, your host. I have Harry with me. Hot Take Harry. By any other name, just as sweet. And George is still masquerading nakedly across the United States. We don't know when he's going to be back, man. That dude's off the reservation right now. So it's just me and Harry. Last episode did phenomenal. We want to thank you guys. It was our first episode that got over 1,000. So that's awesome. It's still growing. It's almost at 1,200 right now. So thank you all so much for that. That was really cool. We knew that the listeners would come out when the Heat won. Oh, we'll see how this video does now that they lost. Because the last time we talked to you guys, it was 1-1. And then the writing was on the wall that this was gonna that series against Boston was gonna feel a lot more like the Denver Nuggets series in the finals last year, where they steal game 2. You're like, huh? Could they do this? And then they lose out, and they don't win a home playoff game. They've lost, I think, 6 in a row at home. Insane for a team competing like the Miami Heat, who's jockeying themselves up to be a championship contender, to lose 6 straight at home in embarrassing fashion. They lost games 3 and 4 against the Nuggets last year, embarrassing fashion. 3 and 4 this year against the Celtics, embarrassing fashion. Game 6 Eastern Conference Finals last year against Boston was the heartbreak, where they were getting embarrassed, and then they made a crazy run at the end where Derek White's just mug. It haunts all of us. And that's not changing anytime soon. But I wanted to start now just by giving you guys a little bit of optimism, right? People drag on us, man. They say, you guys are never positive. You're always so negative. Well, no, we're realistic, and realism is oftentimes can be perceived as negativity because you have to go through those growing pains before you can really stretch your wings and fly. And I had Chinese food tonight. And when you get Chinese food, Harry, do you know what you get as dessert most of the time? It just comes with your meal?
Get some fortune cookies.
You get a fortune cookie. What I have right here, for those watching on YouTube, I have my fortune right here. I saved it because when I read, I said, that's quite apropos. This feels like something that's truly speaking to me and all of our listeners. My fortune reads as such: real courage is moving forward when the outcome is uncertain. Does that sound like a direction that the front office might want to take? It's scary. It's scary to blow up a build that you've had for 5 years. You've gotten very, very comfortable for all the wrong reasons with this build. So it's scary and uncertain to blow it up and venture off into new waters, right? But that's real courage. Pat Riley, you're a courageous man, if not also a little bit spacey now at times, and a little sleepy. He's just a little sleepy, but that's real courage. It takes real courage to move forward. And on top of everything, you know how they tell you your lucky numbers on the back? People are going to think I'm bullshitting. One of the lucky numbers here, 45. Let's see if that'll focus in. It doesn't want to focus in, but the lucky number 45. And why number 45 is very important to us. No, 45 is the jersey number of one Donovan Mitchell. And I think that foreshadowing, fortune cookies, they tell your fortune, they foreshadow. I think that's what this was. And just so everyone doesn't get absolutely just bugabooed by hearing George's voice out of nowhere. George is here now. He's late. He found some way. He's probably in a Starbucks half naked now, just using their free Wi-Fi to be able to talk to us. George, how are you doing? How are you coping with whether it was unceremonious and whether it was ceremonious ending to the season?
I am still at work. I have found a way to sneak out for 5 minutes. I watched the game yesterday. I cried. I then went to a Clippers game, my very first ever NBA game. It was phenomenal. We got the tickets for dirt cheap. But, I mean, we all saw this coming, did we not? We all saw this coming. It was going to happen. Did I think we were going to get blown out by 30-something points? Absolutely not. Bam still showed up. But, I don't know. Look, I've been very disconnected, we'll say, the last few days with a lot of the trades. I re-entered the space this morning. I saw some very interesting takes. Nikola Jovic is now Larry Marketing. I don't know how that worked. I see that Tyler Herro now has actually proved himself to be a very, very useful scorer, but off the bench, which I'm very happy to hear. Yeah, look, it's some stuff we've been saying for a very long time, but I want to know, are we actually going to make changes this offseason? Because this has to be the most interesting offseason since before Jimmy. Because you've got an extension that could kick in. He wants $113 million over a couple of years. I think that's an absolute mistake. You should absolutely not do that. Commit your future to 2 more years of Jimmy in this current shape. If you're not going to make changes, there's no point in re-signing someone like Jimmy. So they've got 2 avenues. Again, every offseason they've got 2 avenues, and they always choose the wrong one. Now can they choose the right one?
I thought you were going to keep going, but that's okay. No, I agree. I'm glad you brought up the Jimmy extension because there's other things that we can talk about, obviously. And Harry, when I shift this to him in a second, he can kind of tell us what he thought about it too with the series. But George said it, man. You're going in some uncharted waters here with Jimmy's contract, and I'll admit, even last night on the post game show, the final one of the season, where we had like 500 people watching for like 2 hours, which is insane, maintaining that viewership. The 500 people wanted to watch us just talk about the season finally being over. That was awesome. But Jimmy's extension last night, I was 100% against it. I'm still against it, but hearing like the numbers and how they kind of work and how you're really just throwing out the option year and tacking on 1 more year to it. It's that 1 extra year, not the second before last year, does not bother me. It's the final year that bothers me, paying him nearly $60 million at 37 years old. That's not that like, I only want LeBron James on my roster making $60 million at 37 years old. Like Jimmy's starting to develop a little more injuries. He's getting older. He's not getting younger. And the only way that I'm okay with giving him that extension is if the Heat are going to be like, all right, thank you for doing what you do. We're giving you this extension because we're expecting you to keep up this performance, keep up this level, right? Like this level of competitiveness and playing. If Jimmy's going to give that to you, then it's okay. But that's the thing, that if you're Jimmy, you're giving that contract. It's not just based off of good faith. It's because you're supposed to continue to be this good player for them. But for them doing that to you, what they failed to do for Dwayne Wade, by the way, someone who deserved way more loyalty than they're apparently seemingly going to give to Jimmy Butler. You need to give that reciprocation back, meaning you cannot just coast in the regular season. We saw this season in a nutshell encapsulating everything that we all said about the regular season, that it matters. Seeding matters. If the Heat did not fuck around just for 2 to 3 more games, hell, even just 2, you're not in the 8th seed. You're in like the 5 seed, the 6 seed. You draw that advantageous matchup. We just saw the Pacers eliminate the Bucks. That could have been you. That probably would have been you. Because you're going to say, I mean, you can play the what-if game all day long, right? Like, does Giannis still get hurt? Or, I don't know, does Dame still sprain his ACL or whatever? That's neither here nor there. The fact of the matter is the cards that you draw are more favorable for you. And if Jimmy's going to get that extension, I'm okay with it if he does not coast to the magnitude that he at least coasted to this last regular season. He only played 50-some-odd games. He needs
can I
to get 65.
Can I inject something? Only because I have to. Okay, I know. I apologize, but I have to leave back to work. But I want to leave on one note. I think this Jimmy extension should come with as much I'm struggling to figure out the correct word for it. It has to matter as much to Pat Riley as it does to Jimmy Butler, because Jimmy needs to go and he wants the extension. That's completely fine. But he has to put pressure on the front office as well to make moves to put him in the best chance possible to win a championship, which is something they haven't done in a few years. It's been a couple of years since they've actually been able to do that. So we've heard the Kevin Durant name pop up a couple of times already. Apparently the Heat are, interested, blah, blah, blah. I couldn't give a shit about that. Interested means nothing. Are they willing to go get a player of that caliber and to give up what's necessary? I don't know. So Jimmy should be talking to the front office saying, I want this extension, but I don't want the same stuff 24/7. I don't want the same team again and again.
Oh, I thought you were still going. No, you're right, though.
I'll keep going.
Well, no, that's okay. That's all right. I think we can cut your wire off. All right.
Okay. I'm going to go back to work. But I'm interested to hear what you guys have to say on the topic.
Sounds good, George.
All right. Bye-bye.
Keep doing the Lord's work. I think that as long as you stay true to that 65-game mark, if Jimmy can legitimately set that bar, LeBron just did it, and he's older. AD was able to do it. There's no reason. I know injuries happen, but there's no reason Jimmy shouldn't be able to set that 65-game barometer and try to match that. You do that, I'm okay with I can live with it. I'm not ecstatic that you're giving him that much money at that age, but it's like, as long as you can make an effort to get 65, I'd be okay with it. Harry, where do you currently stand with it?
Well, I was thinking, during your opening and everything else, I read a book over the weekend, and it was basically, there was a story in the book where well water is always the same temperature. And then depending on whether you drink it in the summer or in the winter is going to completely decide on how you enjoy that water and what it feels like to you. I think that's kind of how this Heat run has been. Many people will tell you this is a great run. This is one of the best runs in Heat history. 2 finals in 5 years. They had a chance. It didn't work out. Other people, myself, for example, would tell you that's horseshit. This is not, coming up short is not where you want to be. And doing nothing while everyone around you got better is not a way to celebrate, I think, the greatness of Heat basketball. And so that's kind of where I am. The only thing I want done, not the only thing. The first thing I want done this summer for the Heat, extend Bam Adebayo. I think the number is 3 years, $163 million. I do not care what the number is. Get that guy locked up. Make sure he feels good going off to France to win us another gold medal, that he's going to be a Heater for an additional 3 years on top of the 2 years he has left in Miami. Get that guy locked up. He's 27. Sign him through his prime. After Bam's locked up, I do not like giving Jimmy Butler more money. He's coming back next year. He has a player option. So essentially, you basically have him signed for 2 for 100 and something right now. He didn't take this year seriously at all. Came into the season as emo Jimmy. I know why he was upset. I understand why he was upset. I can both commiserate with him and understand where he was coming from. He went out of his way. He said, I need help. I want Dame. He went through that, and it did not work out for the Heat for a variety of reasons. The fact they didn't have a backup plan, the fact they couldn't figure this thing out, the fact they didn't make any other moves until they were forced to punt Kyle Lowry's stupid ass into the sun.
Big ass.
Huge ass is annoying. And I think we're just at this point where it's what is it going to take for these guys? It's so hard to find superstars or stars or whatever you want to call them. The Heat had or have 2 of them. Why has it been so hard to find talent around them? The Nuggets don't have a plethora of stars. I mean, listen, Jokic is one of the best players in the league, so he's obviously a superstar. And they have Jamal Murray, who's an absolute crazy. His playoff numbers are insane compared to his regular season numbers. But they have found every legit perfect role guy to put around those 2. The Aaron Gordon trade, the KCP trade, every friggin' rookie they bring in. Brown last year. Now Watson's real good. Like, every move they make just seems to work. And it's frustrating for the Heat, who feels like they've done the opposite. And I think you get to the point where, like, George made a good point that it's always two paths. And it is. And the Heat have tried to straddle this line, and they straddled it so poorly. Either extend Bam, extend Jimmy, give him the extra year, whatever. Or George made a good point. Maybe you kind of like add a team option, and then everyone's kind of like, yeah, we'll keep you if you keep playing at this level, but we also like we can get out of jail free if we need to. But there is a lot of money on the table. It doesn't hurt anyone, and it solidifies. It basically makes. I mean, next year's gonna opt in, whatever. So fine, bring Jimmy back. Then make the move we've been clamoring about for years. Get rid of Tyler Herro. It can be, at this point, it can be as close to a salary dump as possible. Get that guy off my team. We talked about how good his game 2 was. As good as he played in game 2, the rest of the series was horrendous. He shot under 40% from the field in this series. I think in the games outside of game 2, he shot below 30% from 3. Not only can he not hit shots, he's not consistent. He's not efficient. Who is going to take these shots? You, LJ. Me. Anybody else who is not named Tyler Herro is going to take these shots, and they are going to be in a better spot.
I mean, both of us are white. Both of us have the same length wingspan. It's the same thing.
I mean, we have confidence. I'm not sure where we would rise to that level of cockiness, but listen, it's time. It's been time. We've known this for a while. We try not to beat the drum over and over again. But the Heat are not better with this guy on the team. I think there's an argument that they're actually worse. And I think that argument is justified by how far they went last year. How much better everyone's roles were defined last season. And even though we all agreed that last season was a flash in the pan and probably could not happen again, and obviously it couldn't for a variety of reasons, they needed to dump him. And their attachment to him has tanked this build. They wouldn't trade him they kept coddling him. Hey, we're not going to trade you for a top 75 guy. Hey, we're not really trying to move you. We're waiting for them to it wasn't working. We knew that. We really knew that before. I knew that when he got hurt at the end of 2022 and we lost to the Celtics in 7. That's when I knew this guy's not it. Then he gets hurt with a stupid injury last year, diving after a ball. I think that's the only ball he's ever dove for in his life. I know we've talked about that before, but quite legitimately, I do not remember him diving for a ball in any of his other 5 years in the NBA. And then they just excelled without him. They didn't have to worry about how bad he is defensively. They didn't have to worry about him hijacking the offense. They didn't have to worry about setting a screen for him every single time he touched the ball. They didn't have to worry about him making stupid turnovers and jumping and losing the ball. They didn't have to worry about him taking an ill-advised 3. They didn't have to worry about him going into the lane and getting stuffed. They didn't have to worry about him going to the hoop and missing. He is not good enough to justify his salary. He's not good enough to justify the way he plays on this team. And they weren't smart enough to make him a 4th or 5th option off the bench where he could excel and had excelled in the past. And all these things together, again, a lot of it is not his fault. If the team tells you you're great, if the team starts you, if the team does this, what's he going to do? Turn down money? Turn down the starting job? Like, he's a young kid who wants to play basketball. I don't blame him at all. But I just think it got to the point where it's like, it's not going to work out here. So let's get rid of him. Let's get whatever we can for Caleb Martin at this point. I mean, he's going to walk. I just don't want him to walk for free. I hope it's similar to the Max Strus thing, where a team's willing to overpay him for what he can do, and then he can grab something from that 2nd-round pick, traded player exception, whatever. Let's take everybody else and let's make a legitimate move. If you're re-signing Jimmy, bring in other guys that can score the fucking basketball. It's exhausting to watch your team in a playoff game. I don't care how hurt they were. Score 84 points. Score 88 points. Score 94 points. It was funny that George said that he didn't think that we were going to lose by 35 or 34 yesterday. Before the game, I wrote in the group chat, Tyler Herro, 6 of 19. Sorry, 6 of 21, 15 points. Heat lose by 35. The actual stats, Tyler Herro, 6 of 19, 15 points. Heat lose by 35.
It's almost, if it wasn't so sad, it would be very funny. Like going out that sad. If it wasn't that sad, it would be way more funny how predictable it was.
I just think we're at the point, and I don't know what they can do. Like, I don't know if they have the assets. I don't know if they can, get in Donovan Mitchell's a year, Bam doing that and saying, hey, listen, man, we're sorry about a couple years ago. We're ready for you now. This is your time. Let's run Miami, whether Jimmy's here or not, you and me, and we will figure this shit out.
I think that's the direction they go to. Like you said, Bam's extension's coming up too. You have to take that into consideration. I'm okay. Give Bam whatever he wants. I don't think he'll be eligible for the Supermax. Because what do you have to do? You have to make an All NBA team in order to be eligible.
Yeah, he'd have to be third team All NBA.
There's still Embiid's in front of him in the East. They would consider him a center, I guess. Maybe he would actually make. In my opinion, he should be all second team. But
I agree.
But I don't know if all NBA would really consider, like the people that vote for that would consider that anyway. But
I think it is it positionless now. I feel like it is.
If it's positionless, then there's no chance. No chance. He doesn't get the respect he deserves. He's like well agreed upon being like a top 3 center in the NBA.
Another thing is it positionless for the all defense team?
He's definitely on the all defensive team. But
yeah. So here's my thing. So I think to qualify for the Supermax, he needs either Defensive Player of the Year or an All NBA team. So I think you're kind of right. He's going to be on the fringe. It might have been that month where he couldn't hit a friggin' bucket that might have, kind of screwed him from the All NBA. That would suck. I just don't want Bam. I don't want to give Bam another reason to look elsewhere.
Yep.
And do I want to Supermax him? No, I don't think it's good to Supermax anyone. But if you are going to Supermax a guy, that's the guy I do it with. I think at this point, like, the money is negligible. That's a guy I'm fine investing my time, effort, and money in.
I agree.
And no qualms about whatever he's going to get paid with the cap rising. Again, Jimmy's more of a question mark because if he's not going to take the regular season seriously, if he's going to get hurt every year, if he's had unbelievable playoff Jimmy games, he's also had some duds. There have been some games in between that were not great. Whether he was, listen, Josh Hart hurt him last year. Peyton Pritchard hurt him the year before. Like, there's been reasons for it. But I just think he can't be the number one option anymore. If the Heat are lining up for him to do that, it's not going to go well as he ages. And I think my most worrisome thing with the extension would be $58 million for Jimmy. Turning 37, it's basically his 37. He's 37 years old, going into 38 the following summer. Maybe that's the end. Maybe he's retiring, and so maybe it's like, hey, if we give Jimmy one more year for what he's done, okay. But I just need it to lead to something else. I just don't want them to pay him for like past performance, which again was the Wade debate way back when. And now, in hindsight, it's like we should have done it with Wade because Wade was a fucking champion. Wade was elite. And the guys we replaced instead of him,
he hasn't won you anything. Like he's brought you on some fun journeys, but you just haven't won anything. And that's why it's like I said, man, as long as he gives you 65, I'm okay with that. I think that's all right. I think that's the barometer you have to meet with him and have a conversation with him about that and his people. But from Bam's perspective too, I don't think that he'll make the All-NBA team, so I don't think he's going to be eligible for the Supermax anyway. But I want to give him the extension for whatever means necessary, just because he needs to be here. Otherwise, he's going to look for greener pastures, man. He just is. But that's why I do. We won't get into off-season targets today because I want to save that for next week or the week after that when things, actually get pretty dry when it comes to in terms to things to talk about before free agency really opens up. But you look at people want to say like, I saw a tweet today literally mentioning the exact same thing of like, you add Donovan Mitchell to this team, look at the other players on this roster, this still isn't a championship level team. And I don't agree with that whatsoever because you're not considering the fact that other players will take less money to play for your team if they look like they have a solidified big three or a solidified like group of leaders there. Jimmy, Bam, and Donovan, that's it. Like that's solidified. They had Kelly Oubre. You think the Heat would have killed to have Kelly Oubre this year? He would have fit in perfectly. He would have fit like a glove, but they didn't get him because they waited too long with the whole Dame thing. And we're not going to get into that because that's low hanging fruit and it's over. It's also been talked about to death. So we don't need to get into that, but you go get a Donovan Mitchell. Other free agents that are talented will take less money to play. If you look what Shane Battier did, look what Mike Miller did back during the Big Three era. You get these talented players that will play good minutes for you and help you win games because of the players around them. Caleb's going to walk. I think we all kind of know that already. Tyler is the one, right? Like, what can they realistically get for him? We talked about it after the postgame show last night. I think Stone was talking about it mostly. There's probably 4 or 5 teams that'll realistically want to trade for Tyler Herro. Utah, Brooklyn, I think maybe New Orleans. Like these are a couple teams that he would make sense for, and they have the draft capital to get him, or they have other players that can come in and fill a role for you to match the salary cap, right? To match Tyler Herro's output. You were talking about that he's just not good in the playoffs. You talked about his splits, his numbers. When did you know? Like what series was it for you where you knew, okay, he's not it? Because for me, it was the 1 seed year where he had the bad series against Atlanta, but I was like, okay, whatever. He's not used to getting schemed against. He'll adjust against Philadelphia because Philadelphia is clearly not going to prioritize him. Philadelphia still prioritized him, and he still didn't have an answer. And then the Celtics, terrible in a series where he was supposed to match up really well. That whole playoff run, what was that, 2021?
2022.
2022, that's when I knew Dunzo. And then it was solidified the following year when they went to the finals without him. They hold on, and UD was literally talking about it too. It's like his role is better as a 6-man. The front office needs to know that Dan Lebatard, you retweeted it because you were talking about it today too on Twitter. The front office needs to recognize these things 2 years before we do. They're recognizing it 2 years after we recognized it. That's the issue of holding on to depreciating assets for too long. And I get the whole thing. They're human beings. They're not just like make-believe creatures in a video game or something. But to the same point of like to the extent of Tyler Herro, the writing was on the wall, man. We knew what he was. You held on for too long. It is what it is. Cut your losses, move on now. But to get back to my original question, where was it for you? Where you were just like, okay, I understand what he is in the playoffs.
Same exact thing. I remember the Atlanta series of 2022. DeLon Wright destroyed him. It was actually, I remember that series because Jimmy was hurt for Game 5 and Oladipo won them Game 5 at home. Then I went on my honeymoon and I was just kind of like following the game, kind of like watching highlights. So I didn't watch a ton of the Philly series, but I remember he had a really good start to Game 1 against Philadelphia. Like early on, I think he had a big first quarter, and then he like stunk for the rest of the series. And it just became like, yo, what does this guy really do when it matters? In the Celtic series, he was terrible, and then he got hurt. Then they tried to bring him back in Game 7, which was garbage. And you just start to look around, and you're like, okay, I think we had extended him maybe like the summer before, and we're like, this is probably our last chance to get away from him before he might become a bit of an albatross. We didn't. He gets extended. And then we're like, he gets hurt. We make this huge run without him. And it's just like, he's part of the Dame package because of his salary, and they're trying to sell him as this young guy who's just had some bad luck, and no one wants him, and it's kind of like you missed your window when he was a cheap player going into restricted free agency, when a team that was bad could kind of control what they could pay him, could match with what other people were paying him. That's when you got to move these guys and to basically give him, I would assume, most of what he was asking for. I can't imagine he was asking for a lot more. They kind of screwed the pooch, and it's just become a Heat staple where they tell you they're competing, so they can't get rid of guys. They don't trade them. They do okay in the postseason, or they don't do okay. They walk for nothing. This has been going on for so long, LJ. We did that pod. If anyone wants to go back and listen to the pod, we basically talked 10 years of Heat mistakes. Like, this is kind of something they do. They haven't learned. They haven't gotten that much better at it. I don't know what their real game plan is. Like, my assumption would be that they made the Terry trade so that they can become more flexible and make a trade down the road. I don't think Terry Rozier was like the end-all be-all player for them. So, and I don't think anyone values our first-round picks anyway. So it wasn't too big about getting rid of one of them. Like, and I told people this. They would have had 3 picks available to trade at this upcoming draft going into the next season. A couple talks with OKC and Charlotte, and they can have the same 3 picks to move. So for me, it's like if you got the contract, and one, I like Terry. I do like him as a player. I don't know his fit per se with the team, and it's very unfortunate he couldn't play at all with this neck injury or whatever's going on. But I understood the contract. He's cheaper than Lowry. They can figure out what to do with him. He has value. Like a team would want Rozier he's got 2 years left, so it's not a big deal. But it just sorry, go.
No, you go ahead. Go ahead.
But it just becomes like, what is your plan? Why is every offseason they sign 2 schmucky guys on day one who either end up costing them a second-round pick when they have to dump him, or they don't do anything, or unfortunately for Josh Richardson, he got hurt this year, or they signed like Josh Richardson and Thomas Bryant on day one. Whoop-de-fucking-do. Those guys aren't winning you shit. If
Thomas
that's your
Bryant's per 36 last night. Come on.
if those guys are part of your, top 10, okay. You're depending on those guys as your like top 7 to win a championship. No thanks. There's a reason why Josh Richardson on a new team every year. And I just think it gets to the point where like, what's their move? What's their plan? If, for example, we like Donovan Mitchell, make a stink. Let's figure this out. If that doesn't work out, who's plan B? If that doesn't work out, what's plan C? If that doesn't work out, what's plan D? You need to hit on one of those plans. It cannot be like last offseason where they said no to Beal. We don't like his no trade clause. We're going all in on Dame. Dame says I want to be in Miami. And everyone involved, I don't care what you think, screwed that up. Cronin fucked that up by being a dick. The Heat screwed that up by being stubborn.
And Cronin getting 2 Executive of the Year votes is insane.
And I also think this doesn't get talked about enough. Dame and his agent fucked that shit up. The moment that they mentioned that he would go to the Bucks, done. They had a deal ready to go. He wanted to come back to Portland. Cronin was an asshole about it, said no. They shipped him off immediately. And now here he is, first-round exit. No one would have expected it, obviously, early on in the season. But, a Doc Rivers team is always going to let you down. You should have him as a Paul Bearer at your funeral. He will always let you down. And
that's exactly right.
And I just think that, the Heat really need to. I think they need to, like I was saying. I was on a pod last night on Playbook. I've been going on Spaces. I've been talking way too much, but they need a plan starting like today. The season's over. More in the season. Get healthy, figure it out. But the front office should be talking. What are we doing? What's our plan? Who are we going after? Part A. Who are we going after? Part B. And something needs to get done. And if nothing works out, so if A, B, C, and D are all failures, where are you moving Jimmy?
I still don't think that any of that's going to happen. Like, even though it should, and I agree with you, that should be the direction. We all know it's not going to be the direction. Like, I think, and I know I said we're not going to get into off-season targets and everything like that because we'll save that for another day. We'll talk about their fits and everything, but you're talking about playing A, B, C, and D. It's Donovan Mitchell. It's flip them however you want. Damian Lillard, Kevin Durant. Those are going to be the conversations that are had. That's just the way that it's going to be. I think Donovan's feasible. I think he's very obtainable, but I'm not exactly sure what the schematics for that really look like.
And we don't have to talk. I mean, it's fine. I'm more saying like we don't have to get into logistics. Have a plan.
They better too.
Try to execute it, and if you don't, like, what's next? And part of the plan, regardless of who they get, is where are we sending Tyler Herro? What are we comfortable getting back from him? And even if we're not comfortable,
anything. My friend literally texted me yesterday in the midst of the blowout. I was like, LJ, who are Heat fans going to conjure up? What superstar or Heat fans going to conjure up and say, oh, we'll just give you Tyler Herro for? I was like, nobody. Those days are over. They're long gone. We just want anything for him. Give us anything. I want a first round pick. I'll take a salary matching 2 role players. Like that's where we're at.
Yeah, and I think I don't know if it would have ever worked with Herro because the problem is we really don't know what his stock is like around the league. Like there are certain teams where we could say, oh yeah, Herro could like work here. Like the Magic are a team that could use a microwave scorer. The Jazz have seemed interested for years, even though I feel like they have a similar guy in Clarkson. The Nets have been interested. Like, if one of those teams are willing to give you a couple role guys for Herro, and you can either use those guys, like maybe you can get an expiring back, and you can use those guys in another trade, or you get a role player that makes sense. That's what they got to do. This, depending on him as a guy who's going to be healthy, has not worked. Depending on him as a guy that's going to be efficient, has not worked. Depending on him as the big 3, which is insane at this point to call it them, because of what the big 3 actually was and represents, and those 3 guys are all Hall of Famers, all guys at the top of their game, all guys that sacrifice to win, all guys that are just elite basketball talent. I'll go so far as like basketball geniuses, savants. They're all so good at the game. It's disgraceful to include Tyler in something like that. Disgraceful. Disgusting, if you will.
And just on the topic of the whale hunting, right, for the offseason, I am confident, genuinely confident. Like, I know we've been a little more negative because, I mean, we're talking about a season that was very unceremonious and worse to watch than last season. I know we had the playoff run last year that kind of wiped that taste out of our mouth. But it's not all doom and gloom because I am confident going into this offseason because when the Heat have been embarrassed and gotten the belt to ass, they genuinely respond accordingly. They don't sit on their hands. They make a move. That's just usually what this organization does. It's been the same people in the front office like my whole life. So it's like there's a very clear repetitious pattern that they follow when a build is dead, right? Or when they know they need to make a move to rejuvenate something. I think that you're going to see that this offseason, and it doesn't always need to be the whale, right? Like you saw, like you were saying, the Denver Nuggets, man, was KCP and Aaron Gordon a whale? No, they were extremely good fitting complementary pieces. Remember when, I know that people are also going to combat this point saying he was just using the Heat for leverage, was Jalen Brunson. Remember that when he left Dallas, and you're saying he's taking a meeting with the Knicks and the Miami Heat. Jalen Brunson wasn't considered a whale. And when people heard that Jalen Brunson was meeting with the Heat, people were not happy about that. Do you think they'd be happy about that now? Jalen Brunson wasn't a whale at that point. He's turned into a superstar.
I was having a conversation with my brother when I was at the airport the other day, and he was like, Jalen Brunson's a top 10 player in the NBA now. And I was like, no way. And then I was like going through the list, and I was like, yeah, maybe he is.
I genuinely think he is. I mean, the dude's averaging 40 a night against the Sixers. I don't care who you are. He came on against the Heat last year. Like, we all stamped him when we saw that series against the Heat. We're like, Knicks suck. Jalen Brunson's that dude. Like, he is for real. And he has followed that up in his second now back-to-back playoff series for him in his career, where he's been phenomenal. And then even going back to Dallas when the Mavs made that run at the Eastern Conference or the Western Conference Finals, he's that dude. Like, he plays his best basketball, and he went to Villanova, so he went to like the school of booty ball where he just throws his ass around. It works.
He learned it from the best.
He damn right he did. I mean, his ass ain't that big, but if you're gonna learn booty ball from somebody, he is the guy he's going up against right now too. It's just they don't need to be the whale if they can fit the team and what the team needs perfectly, or they can grow into being the whale. Like that, it doesn't always need to be. I need a future Hall of Famer right now.
But
get a player and mold them.
But I think that's exactly the point, LJ. You're making a good point. Like, bring in talent. They don't necessarily got to be the star, because one, they could become the star, or two, they could be the perfect fit. I thought you gave a lot of good examples there, right? You're talking about, obviously, the Nuggets weren't expecting stardom from Aaron Gordon and KCP. Elite role players around Jokic. You could not have found two better guys for trying to win championships, for as long as Jokic is at the top of his game, which could last a while, because he could always go horseback riding. He's always going to have time for that. And you mentioned Brunson. That's why I also I don't know what's going to happen in this game. I'm watching it go back and forth. But also I thought OG would be such a good friggin' role player for the Heat. Is OG Anunoby a star? No. But he's an elite defensive wing who can hit the three. He's hit some big shots in his career. He's very athletic. And that's a guy that would have made sense. It's a guy that was on their timeline. He was drafted a few picks after Bam, I believe. That's the same draft. So that's what I'm trying to figure out. Make the move. Like you said, anytime they've really been spanked, they have gone out and made that move. They got to do it again. And it can't be, not this Kyle Lowry stuff, not re-signing guys that don't make sense. Who's out there that makes sense for the team that's going to help them compete? And again, if they're going to keep Jimmy and that's the move they want, and they want to repay him for what he's done for the org, and the fact that he came here at a bad time and kind of picked them up because they were looking real sketchy. Bring in guys that help them. Jimmy and Bam are not the cleanest offensive fits together. So find me the guys that help them succeed and make it happen. Stop pretending that you don't need to make moves. Stop making Spo have to do magic out there. Stop pretending that internal growth is a real thing for Publix bag boys. They might be able to bag the groceries a little bit faster, but they're not going to get you, they're not helping you win the supermarket championship. And in the same respect here, they're not going to be the answer. So if you want those guys to supplant the back of the roster, two-way guys, be my guest. There's a lot of roster spots available. But in terms of guys you need to win a championship and compete in the postseason, I don't want to see them anymore. I want to see actual NBA talent up and down the roster. So when the Heat go through the East, they got a great chance to win. When they match up against the West, they have the size.
They have a puncher's chance.
They have a puncher's chance. I don't care what anyone says. They have not been close. Yes, they're technically contenders. Yes, they were the second, the runner-up, the second team. They have not been close to winning a championship. There's no way you could say they are. And I think we need to get over ourselves, stop pretending this was that close, and figure this stuff out.
I think that's well said, and that's probably a good point to leave it, just because, like I said, it's going to be a long off season, right? We're used to potting into late May. And right now, it's May 2nd and the season's over. So we're going to have to find some kind of way to do a little more than we did last off season, at least. So thank you guys for listening. We appreciate you. Thank you so much for an amazing season. We'll still be giving content. I know free agency is going to open up and it's going to be very entertaining. I think, like Harry said too, you're going to be in for an entertaining offseason, at least a different offseason than we've grown accustomed to, for better or worse. So thank you guys for watching. Take care. Be good people.
Need a stop and a rebound. Fournier for three.
Oh, my. That was the Random Scrub Heat podcast.